You think you've made it. 6 figures, maybe 7. The number in your bank statement would make your younger self weep with relief. And yet, here you are, reading this at midnight, quietly terrified that if your paycheck stopped tomorrow, everything would collapse within 90 days. Maybe 60, maybe 30. That's not success. That's a gilded cage with a very comfortable mattress. Here's the paradox nobody talks about at the country club. The more money you make, the easier it becomes to be broke. Not broke like ramen noodles and a leaking roof broke. Broke like a high-performance engine running on fumes. Broke like a Formula One car that can't afford its own fuel. Impressive from the outside, terrifying from the inside. This is the high-income poverty trap, and it doesn't care how smart you are. It doesn't care about your MBA, your LinkedIn title, or the zip code on your mortgage. It is a system, a physics problem. And like all physics problems, it operates whether you understand it or not. Let me show you the machine. Think about a rocket leaving Earth's atmosphere. The engineers don't just need enough fuel to go up, they need enough fuel to escape gravity entirely. There's a specific threshold, escape velocity, below which the rocket will always fall back down, no matter how high it climbs. It might reach 40,000 feet. It might reach 80,000. But without crossing that threshold, gravity wins. Every time. Without exception. Your income is the rocket. Your lifestyle is gravity. Most high earners spend their entire careers climbing, higher salary, bigger bonus, better title, without ever reaching escape velocity. They go higher, they go faster, but the gravitational pull of their expenses, their obligations, their identity-driven spending grows in perfect proportion to their altitude. They never break free. They just fall from greater heights. This is not a moral failure. This is orbital mechanics. The question isn't whether you're earning enough. The question is whether you're generating enough thrust to escape the gravity well you've built around yourself. And the brutal truth is, most people with high incomes are building a stronger gravitational field with every raise they receive. Let's break down exactly how the machine works. 5 cycles, 5 traps, each one invisible until you name it. The lifestyle inflation ratchet. There's a mechanism in engineering called a ratchet. It's a gear that moves in one direction only, forward. It cannot go backward. Click, click, click. Each notch locks in place permanently. Your lifestyle is a ratchet. When you were earning $40,000 a year, you drove a used Honda. You split rent. You cooked at home 4 nights a week. Then you got promoted. You earned $80,000. The Honda became a lease on a BMW. The split apartment became your own place. The home cooking became DoorDash and restaurant tabs. Click. The ratchet moved forward. Then $120,000. Then $180,000. Then $250,000. Click, click, click. Here's what nobody tells you about the ratchet. It only moves forward because your brain is wired to treat upgrades as the new baseline. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it's one of the most well-documented phenomena in behavioral economics. Princeton psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent decades studying it. The conclusion is brutal in its simplicity. Humans adapt to improvements almost completely and almost immediately. The new car stops feeling new within 3 months. The bigger house stops feeling spacious within 6. The business class seat stops feeling luxurious once it becomes your standard. So you upgrade again. Because the old level no longer produces the feeling the new level once promised. This is not weakness, This is your brain doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. Constantly recalibrate to the new normal so you remain motivated to keep pushing. The problem is that evolution designed this system for a world where more meant survival. More food, more shelter, more safety. It did not design it for a world where more means a $14,000 kitchen renovation and a second vacation home in Scottsdale. The ratchet clicks forward. Your expenses lock in. Your savings rate stays flat or shrinks. And your income, no matter how impressive, is perpetually chasing a lifestyle that is always one step ahead. The exit. You don't fight the ratchet by willpower. You fight it by automation. Before the ratchet can click, you remove the money from the equation entirely. Automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, not what's left over. First, before the ratchet has anything to grab onto, you make the upgrade impossible by making the money invisible. The ratchet can't click if there's nothing to click with. The status tax. In 1899, economist Thorstein Veblen introduced a concept that was considered radical at the time and is now simply called reality. Conspicuous consumption. The idea that humans don't just buy things for utility,
They buy things to signal status, to communicate their position in the social hierarchy without saying a word. The watch that tells time no better than a $20 Casio, but costs $28,000. The car that gets you to the same destination as a Toyota, but announces your arrival differently. The neighborhood where the school district is identical to the one 3 miles away, but the address carries a different weight at dinner parties. This is the status tax, and it is the most expensive tax you will ever pay. Because unlike income tax, it has no ceiling, no deductions, and no refund. Here's the mechanism. Humans are social primates. Our brains are wired to track social hierarchy with the same intensity that they track physical threats. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky at Stanford has spent 30 years studying the biology of status. His research shows that low perceived status triggers the same stress hormones as physical danger: cortisol, adrenaline. The body doesn't distinguish between "a lion is chasing me" and "my colleague just bought a bigger house than mine." The threat response is identical. So when you buy the expensive watch, you're not being shallow. You're medicating a biological stress response. You're telling your nervous system, "I am safe. I am high status." The threat is neutralized. The problem is that the medication wears off, because status is relative, not absolute. The moment your neighbor upgrades, your position shifts. The medication stops working. You need a higher dose. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that high-income individuals in affluent social circles reported lower financial satisfaction than moderate-income individuals in less affluent circles, despite having objectively more money. The reference group determines the feeling, not the number. This is why a doctor earning $400,000 a year can feel financially squeezed when surrounded by surgeons earning $800,000. The math says abundance, the biology says scarcity, and the biology wins. The status tax compounds silently. The $80,000 car, the $6,000 watch, the private school tuition, not because the education is better, but because the other parents at the firm send their kids there. The vacation to a destination you don't particularly love, but that photographs well. Add it up across a year, across a decade. You're not spending money. You're paying a tax to a social system that will never issue a receipt and never stop collecting. The exit. Deliberately engineer your reference group. This sounds cold. It isn't. It's survival. If your social circle consists entirely of people who earn more than you and spend visibly, your brain will perpetually register scarcity regardless of your income. Find people who measure success differently. Not people who are failing, people who are winning by different metrics. The entrepreneur who drives a 10-year-old truck and owns 4 rental properties. The professor who takes 3 months off every year and has a paid-off house. Exposure to different definitions of success is the only antidote to the status tax, because you cannot out-earn a reference group that keeps moving the finish line. The complexity debt spiral. Simple lives are cheap, complex lives are expensive, and high income almost always purchases complexity. Think about what happens as income rises. The tax situation becomes complicated. You need an accountant, maybe a tax attorney. The investment portfolio grows. You need a financial advisor, maybe a wealth manager. The business interests expand. You need a lawyer, maybe multiple lawyers. The properties accumulate. You need property managers, maintenance crews, insurance brokers. The lifestyle requires coordination, a personal assistant, a house cleaner, a meal delivery service, a dog walker, a personal trainer. Each of these is individually rational. Collectively, they create what I call complexity debt. Complexity debt is the ongoing cost of maintaining a life that has grown too intricate to run without infrastructure. And like financial debt, it compounds. Each new complexity requires management. The management requires time. The time is scarce. The scarcity requires more paid solutions, which add more complexity, which require more management. Here's the mathematical reality. A person earning $500,000 a year with a complex life, multiple properties, business interests, high-maintenance social obligations, private school tuitions, luxury car leases, club memberships, can easily spend $350,000 to $400,000 maintaining that complexity. Their actual discretionary surplus, the money that could build real wealth, might be $50,000 to $100,000. Meanwhile, a person earning $150,000 with a deliberately simple life might save $60,000 to $70,000 per year. The high earner has 3 times the income. The simple liver has comparable or superior wealth-building capacity. This is not a hypothetical.
A 2019 study by Ramsey Solutions, analyzing the habits of 10,000 millionaires, found that the majority drove ordinary cars, lived in modest homes relative to their income, and described their financial lives as deliberately uncomplicated. The complexity was not the reward of wealth. The simplicity was the mechanism of it. The complexity debt spiral accelerates because complexity is socially rewarded. Having a complicated life signals importance. Busy people are perceived as valuable people. The person who says, "I have to check with my assistant," sounds more successful than the person who manages their own calendar. The person with 3 properties sounds more accomplished than the person with 1 paid-off house. The complexity becomes part of the identity, and dismantling it feels like dismantling yourself. The exit. Audit your complexity annually. List every recurring expense that exists to manage another expense or maintain a lifestyle element you didn't consciously choose. Ask one question for each. Does this create joy, freedom, or wealth? If the answer is none of the 3, it is complexity debt. Pay it off. Simplify. The goal is not minimalism for its own sake. The goal is maximum surplus with minimum friction. Every dollar freed from complexity maintenance is a dollar that can reach escape velocity. The liquidity illusion. Here's a number, $2.3 million. That is the approximate net worth of a 45-year-old professional who has been contributing to a 401k for 20 years, owns a home in a major metropolitan area, and has some equity in a small business or investment portfolio. Impressive. Genuinely impressive. Here's another number. $0. That is approximately how much of that $2.3 million they can access tomorrow without triggering penalties, taxes, forced sales, or catastrophic disruption to their life. The 401k is locked until 59 and a half, or subject to a 10% penalty plus income tax. The home equity requires either a sale, which means finding somewhere else to live, or a loan against it, which creates new debt. The business equity is illiquid by definition. You can't sell 30% of a small business on a Tuesday afternoon. The investment portfolio might be accessible, but selling it means realizing gains, paying taxes, and potentially disrupting a long-term strategy. This is the liquidity illusion. You look wealthy on paper. You are asset-rich and cash-poor in reality.
And in a crisis, a job loss, a medical emergency, a business downturn, paper wealth does not pay bills. Liquidity does. The Federal Reserve's 2023 Survey of Consumer Finances revealed something startling. A significant percentage of households earning over $200,000 annually reported that they could not cover a $10,000 emergency expense without borrowing. Not because they lacked assets, because their assets were locked, leveraged, or illiquid. The liquidity illusion is particularly dangerous because it creates false confidence. You check your net worth app. The number is large. Your nervous system relaxes. The biological threat response quiets. You feel safe. But safety and liquidity are not the same thing. A castle is impressive. A castle surrounded by a moat with no drawbridge is a prison. High earners fall into this trap because every financial advisor, every tax strategy, every wealth-building framework pushes toward tax-advantaged, illiquid vehicles. Max your 401k, invest in real estate, build equity. These are not bad pieces of advice, but followed exclusively, they create a portfolio that looks extraordinary and functions poorly in the short term. The exit. The rule of liquid reserves. Before optimizing for long-term wealth, build a liquid emergency fund of 12 to 18 months of actual expenses, not income, expenses, in accessible, low-risk accounts. Not invested, not locked, accessible. This feels inefficient. It is inefficient, in the narrow mathematical sense. But it is the foundation that makes every other strategy survivable. A chess player who sacrifices a pawn to protect the king is not being inefficient. They are being strategic. Liquidity is your king. Protect it first. The identity anchor. This is the most dangerous cycle of all, and it is the one nobody wants to talk about because it requires looking at something uncomfortable. Your income has become your identity, not just a number, not just a resource, an identity, a self-concept, a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. When your income is your identity, cutting expenses feels like self-harm. Driving a cheaper car doesn't feel like a financial decision. It feels like a demotion. Moving to a smaller house doesn't feel like optimization. It feels like failure. Saying no to the expensive vacation doesn't feel like discipline. It feels like admitting defeat. This is not vanity. This is neuroscience. The brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-referential thinking, for the story of who I am, treats threats to identity with the same urgency as threats to physical survival. Psychologist Claude Steele's research on self-affirmation theory demonstrates that when core aspects of identity are threatened, humans will go to extraordinary lengths to defend them, including making objectively irrational financial decisions.
The high earner who takes out a home equity loan to maintain a lifestyle they can no longer afford after a pay cut is not being stupid. They are defending their identity with the same ferocity that a soldier defends a position. The position may be strategically indefensible, but retreat feels like annihilation. Here's the specific mechanism. When your income rises, you don't just buy things, you buy a version of yourself. The person who drives that car, the person who lives in that neighborhood, the person who sends their kids to that school, the person who vacations in those places. Each purchase is a brick in the architecture of a self-concept, and when the income that supports that self-concept is threatened by job loss, by market downturn, by business failure, the response is not rational recalibration. It is desperate defense. This is why high earners often go into debt not during poverty, but during transition. The executive who loses their job and spends 18 months maintaining their lifestyle on savings and credit cards, convinced the next opportunity is just around the corner, because admitting the need to downsize would mean admitting something about who they are. The entrepreneur whose business contracts and who doubles down on personal spending to signal confidence to clients and partners, because appearing successful is part of the product they're selling. The identity anchor doesn't just trap you financially. It traps you strategically. It prevents you from making the pivots, the reductions, the recalibrations that would actually solve the problem, because every solution requires temporarily becoming someone you've decided you're not. The exit. Decouple your identity from your income. This is not a weekend exercise. It is a years-long project. It begins with a single question asked honestly. Who am I when the income stops? If the answer is terrifying, if the answer is nobody or I don't know, then the work is not financial. The work is existential, and it is the most important financial work you will ever do. Because a person whose identity is anchored in character, relationships, craft, and values rather than income and consumption can survive any financial storm. They can downsize without shame. They can pivot without panic. They can make rational decisions in irrational circumstances. They are not free because they have money. They are free because they don't need money to know who they are.
Now let's talk about the research that ties all of this together. In 2010, Princeton economists Angus Deaton and Daniel Kahneman, both Nobel laureates, published a landmark study on income and happiness. Their finding became famous. Emotional well-being stopped improving at an income of approximately $75,000 per year, adjusted for inflation, roughly $110,000 to $120,000 today. Beyond that threshold, more income did not produce more day-to-day happiness. But here's the part of the study that gets less attention. The researchers also found that higher income was associated with higher life evaluation, the sense that your life is going well, but lower moment-to-moment emotional experience. In other words, high earners felt better about their lives in the abstract, but experienced more stress, more anxiety, and less joy in the actual living of them. They were winning the scoreboard. They were losing the game. A follow-up study by Matthew Killingsworth at the University of Pennsylvania complicated the picture further, suggesting that the happiness-income relationship continues beyond $75,000, but only for people who spend their money on experiences, time, and freedom, rather than status and things. The mechanism matters more than the amount. What this research collectively suggests is not that money doesn't matter. It absolutely does. Below a certain threshold, financial stress is genuinely debilitating. But above that threshold, the relationship between income and well-being is almost entirely determined by how the income is deployed. The same $300,000 salary can produce either profound freedom or profound anxiety, depending entirely on the 5 cycles we've just examined. The trap is not income. The trap is the system that income funds. Let's talk about what the other side looks like. Not the fantasy version, the mechanical version. A person who has escaped the high-income poverty trap does not necessarily earn more than you. They might earn significantly less. What they have is different. They have what Warren Buffett calls
The ability to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, for as long as I want. That is his definition of success. Not net worth, not income, optionality, freedom, the capacity to choose. This person has automated their savings before their lifestyle can claim the money. They have a liquid emergency fund that makes them genuinely crisis-proof. They have deliberately simplified their life to minimize complexity debt.
They have chosen a reference group that measures success by freedom rather than display. And they have done the identity work to know who they are independent of what they earn. They are not ascetics. They are not minimalists in the Instagram sense. They spend money, sometimes a lot of it. But they spend it on things that generate freedom, joy, or wealth, and they are ruthlessly indifferent to everything else. The difference between them and the high-income poor is not discipline, it is not intelligence, it is not even income. It is systems. They have built systems that work with human psychology rather than against it. They have automated the behaviors that their biology would otherwise undermine. They have engineered their environment so that the default choice is the right choice. This is the Buffett principle applied to personal finance. The best investment strategy is the one you can actually maintain, not the theoretically optimal one, the one that survives contact with your own psychology. Here is what the math looks like when the system works. Take two people. Both earn $200,000 per year. Person A saves 5%, $10,000 annually. Person B saves 25%, $50,000 annually. Over 30 years, assuming a 7% average annual return, Person A accumulates approximately $944,000. Person B accumulates approximately $4.7 million. Same income, same time horizon, same market. 5 times the outcome. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is not luck. The difference is the percentage of income that escapes the gravitational field of lifestyle and reaches the compounding engine of investment. That's it. That's the entire equation. Now add the compounding effect of starting earlier. A person who begins saving $50,000 per year at 25 versus 35 doesn't just have 10 more years of savings. They have 10 more years of compounding on every dollar. The difference in outcome is not linear. It is exponential. The person who starts at 25 might accumulate $12 million by 65. The person who starts at 35 might accumulate $6 million. Same income, same savings rate, 10 years of difference, double the outcome. This is the snowball that Buffett talks about, not a metaphor, a mathematical reality. The snowball grows because it is rolling. The longer it rolls, the faster it grows. But it can only roll if it escapes the warm pavement of lifestyle inflation. On warm pavement, the snowball melts. It doesn't matter how big it gets. It melts.
The high-income poverty trap is warm pavement. Beautiful, expensive, Instagram-worthy, warm pavement. And it melts every snowball that touches it. Let's be precise about what breaking free actually requires. Not inspiration, mechanics. First, calculate your actual savings rate today. Not what you think it is, what it actually is. Total money invested or saved this month divided by total gross income this month. If the number is below 20%, you are in the trap. If it is below 10%, you are deep in the trap. If it is below 5%, you are in free fall and the ground is closer than you think. Second, identify which of the 5 cycles is your primary trap. The lifestyle inflation ratchet, the status tax, the complexity debt spiral, the liquidity illusion,
the identity anchor. Most people have elements of all five, but one is usually dominant. Name it. You cannot solve a problem you haven't named. Third, implement one structural change, not a behavioral change, a structural one. Behavioral changes require willpower. Structural changes require a single decision that then operates automatically. Increase your automatic investment transfer by 5% of income starting next payday. Cancel 3 subscriptions or memberships that exist primarily for status. Open a high-yield savings account and set up an automatic transfer of 1 month's expenses per quarter until you have 12 months liquid. One structural change. This week, not next month, this week. Fourth, have the identity conversation with yourself. Write down, actually write, not think, who you are independent of your income, your relationships, your skills, your values, your curiosity, your history. The things that would remain true if the income disappeared tomorrow. This is not a soft exercise. This is the foundation of financial resilience. A person who knows who they are can survive any financial storm. A person whose identity is their income cannot survive the first serious disruption. Fifth, change one element of your reference group. Find one person in your life, or deliberately seek one out, who has achieved genuine financial freedom by a different path than status and display. Study them. Not to copy their lifestyle, to understand their psychology. To see that the alternative is real and livable, and often more satisfying than the trap you're currently in. The rocket metaphor, one more time, because it matters. You are already in the air. You have already done the hard part of getting off the ground.
The income is real. The capability is real. The question is whether you are going to keep burning fuel fighting gravity, or whether you are going to make the adjustments necessary to reach escape velocity. Escape velocity is not a fantasy. It is a specific number. For most high earners, it is a savings rate of 25% to 35% maintained consistently for 15 to 20 years. That's it. That's the physics. Hit that number, maintain it, and the mathematics of compounding will do the rest. The snowball will roll. The rocket will break free. The gravitational field of lifestyle will lose its grip. But you have to make the adjustments now. Not when you earn more, not when the kids are through college, not when the mortgage is paid off. Now. Because every year you spend in the trap is a year of compounding you will never recover. The math is not patient. The math does not negotiate. The math simply runs. Here is the final truth, and it is the one that changes everything if you actually let it land. The high-income poverty trap is not a trap because you lack money. It is a trap because you have built a life that requires all of your money to maintain itself. The trap is not the income. The trap is the system the income funds. And systems can be redesigned. Not perfectly, not overnight, not without discomfort, but redesigned, deliberately, structurally. One automated transfer, one canceled membership, one honest conversation with yourself at a time. The door is not locked. It never was. It just looks like a wall because you've been staring at it from the wrong angle. The physics is on your side. Compounding is the most powerful force in the financial universe, and it is available to you right now, today, with the income you already have. You don't need more money. You need more of your money to escape gravity. The rocket is already built. The fuel is already loaded.
The trajectory just needs adjusting. Make the adjustment. The atmosphere is thinner than you think. And on the other side of it, on the other side of escape velocity, there is something that no salary, no title, no address, and no watch can purchase. There is the ability to choose. That is what freedom actually costs. Not sacrifice, not deprivation, not a smaller life. Just the courage to stop letting the system run on autopilot. The door is open. Walk through it.